Hi there. So my name is Virginia Staab, and I'm the Public Affairs Officer at the U.S. Embassy here in Lisbon. And I wanted to talk to you about a couple things that you may not think really go together. And it's something that obviously has been very topical in the recent past, this week actually. And I wanted to talk to you about public sector and innovation, because all of us, all the governments are sort of having trouble in the finances department, and it requires us to be a little more innovative, a little more strategic in what we're doing. And I know a lot of people toss those words around, but I wanted to show you some examples today and sort of also show you that it's a work in progress. Obviously, with things that are evolving so quickly, technology and innovation is sort of the fastest that it's ever been happening, and we're trying to jump on board. One thing that happened recently is digitizing disaster recovery. So Hurricane Sandy, that basically took out our entire eastern seaboard and many extremely populous areas in New York, New Jersey, etc. Some of you I know were there actually when that happened. But what we did is the U.S. Geological Service, along with the Civil Air Patrol and NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, got together, and what they did is they were able to distinguish where areas were extremely affected by satellites, etc. And so what happened was they could see areas that were just completely wiped out. They went with civic roles, and what they did is they identified those individuals that they basically had no chance of having any property left. And if they still had a cell phone that was registered, they were able to apply for FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Assistance, through an app, wherever they were, actually. And so this was just on the left-hand side here, this is where they pulled it up. It was a smart app that was on their phones. It was online, obviously, and then they were able to apply for disaster recovery assistance immediately. And over 57% of the people did. So it was hundreds of thousands of people that were able to immediately access insurance funds. And I don't know about your history, but our history, that never happened. So it was kind of a really big deal. The other thing that the Obama administration has done very recently, and I'm ashamed to say we haven't done it more in the longer past, but is we've opened government data to basically the general public with the idea that businesses and others in the private sector, academic sector, nonprofits, etc., could look at this information, take with it what they needed, and then help to problem solve things that the governments couldn't resolve on their own. So what happened was they built this site called data.gov that is open to any member of the public. And it had 75,000 different types of data sets that talked about how long you had to wait for the hospital, how fast you could receive assistance, how anything that sort of happened, it threw this information out onto the internet so that anybody could access it and then figure out how to solve some of our problems in the USG, and I think we need a little bit more of that today. But so this new site was brand new for the US government, and I know I've been talking to some people here in Portugal because I've now been here a little over 2 years, and I've been talking, and I know that you have some similar things, but it's actually a new thing for us. One of the things I wanted to tell you about was something that I was very, very intimately involved in. It was after the Haiti earthquake in 2010. And I know exactly where I was when it happened because it happened just shortly before 5 Eastern Standard Time. And within 10 minutes, the US government held a telephone conference with all of us online, anybody who had an interest in it. And at the time, I was the spokesperson for the Western Hemisphere Affairs. So what that means is that I was working in Washington, D.C., and I was the person that was going to be asked, what's happening in Haiti? So when the president wasn't speaking, or when Secretary Clinton at the time wasn't speaking, it was meant to be me in different languages. And so within 15 minutes of the earthquake, our ambassador, Kenneth Merton, down in Haiti, he had just left, actually, the mission for the day because he had some evening events. And the earthquake happened, and he was in the middle of his route home. And as some of you know, we travel in fully armored vehicles that are extremely heavy. And so his vehicle was pulled off to the side. It actually was in a crater. So he had to get out, and he commandeered a motorcycle, and he raced back to the embassy. Thankfully, our embassy was still intact, but we had lots of structural damage. Lots of our people were injured. Actually, many of our people died. I did a temporary duty down there right after because the cultural attaché was killed when she came out of the house. It crashed down on her, sorry. But what happened was, when we were on that phone call, we were brainstorming. What can we do? What can we do? Obviously, something that Americans know very well is, and they were taught from a very young age, is that we've been extremely fortunate and our obligation is to give back. And so what that means is we were all on the line. Our Undersecretary for Management, Patrick Kennedy, said, okay, this is what we do. We have training, we jump into action. We stand up emergency action committees down at Post. We also stood up task forces that went 24 hours a day. We had 7 of them. I was the coordinator for one of them. And we would get everything from text messages from people that were under the rubble to others that didn't have water, didn't know where their family members were, others, Americans, that couldn't track their adopted children down in Haiti, etc. So we received, and then we received tons of offers of government assistance, offers of private assistance, bottles of water, disaster recovery teams. We were trying to mobilize everyone we could. But one thing that came up really quickly, actually, within about 24 hours, is an idea called TextHaiti. And enter in this private sector company that we had been initially talking to, and we said, what can you do? And we decided that the American population, as you may know, is usually extremely generous with regards to any sort of disaster internationally, but certainly at home. And so what happened was we came up with this idea of TextHaiti. And everyone had a cell phone, so everyone in the United States would text Haiti, and they would put $10 on their phone bill. And then this all went to Haiti. And I realize it's not a perfect system. And that things happened, but a lot of that money did go to Haiti, and it went there immediately. And the companies that, the cell wireless companies, were able to expedite the processing, so you didn't have to wait the 30 or 60 days until someone paid their bill. They were able to get that money to Haiti quickly, and that made a big difference in people's lives. So this is it right here, basically to confirm your $10 donation to the Red Cross. Click yes, and off it went. That gave $15 million to Haiti within a very, very short period of time. Just grassroots. Obviously, governments were giving money as well in a more formal process, but this money came from the general public. And that was, we think, a good example. Another one that I actually was intimately involved in as well, only from the periphery, only sitting there sort of at the meetings, was we identified that in Mexico, many of the journalists were being killed because the ruthless drug trafficking organizations that operate along our borders, the border of Mexico and the United States, essentially what happened was anytime anyone reported, oh, this activity is happening there, or they're throwing cocaine over here, or they're digging a tunnel under the fence, or anything that's going on, journalists would be sought out and they would be killed. And so what we tried to do, again, working with the private sector and several amazingly innovative groups, they got together and they were able to come up with this app that was designed just to allow individuals, especially journalists, but any individuals, to report what was happening in Mexico without being tracked. And that made an incredible difference. Actually, right now they're working on Syria, and I'm out of the information loop, so maybe some of that is happening right now. But it was a wonderful example of allowing people to report what was happening so that the authorities could move in and take action without fear of repercussion, without fear of individuals being killed or their families being targeted. Because what was happening was journalists were just reporting on the weather. That's all they did in their newspapers, that's all they did on the radio. And it was obviously extremely difficult because everybody knew more was happening than the weather. So, a little bit about how we make this practical here. And just to give you a little bit of my history, so I was in the private sector until 9/11. And on 9/11, I was horrified. That obviously it was a horrible, devastating thing for many of us, and I know a lot of Portuguese were there as well, but Americans as well. It was the first time that anything had happened in my lifetime that was so devastating on a terrorist scale in the United States. And I felt that we as Americans were really not understood abroad, rightly or wrongly. and that I wanted to do something that was a little more soul-enriching and a little more to put my voice into action instead of sitting on the sidelines just kibitzing. So I left my private sector job. I kissed a big fat paycheck goodbye, and I started the most rewarding experience of my life, which is joining as a diplomat for our U.S. State Department. And so I started out in Bogota, Colombia, where at the time, this was 2003, at the time it was turning to a much more secure situation, but it still was sort of not really moving along technologically. And so we used to talk on radio. We used to talk on, we used to have interviews with papers, but it was really difficult to get out into the masses except talking to a big group like this. Whereas today, social media and online presence allows us, right now we went from 2,000 Facebook fans a year ago to 24,000 in a year. So we can actually communicate with 24,000 people each day. And that may not be sort of explosive numbers, but how we've done that is in a few different ways. We offer up free exchange opportunities, so exchange opportunities for Portuguese to go to the United States. We also pay for Americans to come here on many different topics on everything you can think of, from Muslim relations to the economy to the Department of Justice coming recently on reporting crime. So we do this all over. We have online courses from top universities. Again, it's free. We have language, learning the language online. We also identified here that because the economic situation was so difficult and still continues to be, we highlighted all the amazing things about Portugal. And I think it really touched into Portuguese patriotism. And I think that was one of the ways that we were able to really garner a loyal Facebook population. And then also Portuguese performance out in the world. So everything that Portugal and Portuguese members were doing off anywhere in the world that were a huge success story, because there are so many of them. It's amazing. There's a story today in the press that President Obama met with some small business owners that are Luso descendants, and he's talking about how the USG shutdown, which we can't talk about, is affecting small business. And that's a very important conversation. But it's a Portuguese success story in that it's a Luso descendant that has gone to the United States, started a small business, and has garnered the attention of the President of the United States. So in closing, these are some of the programs that we offer. We offer for all age groups. I encourage you, we have everything from aircraft carrier visits to different exchanges, to different paid scholarships, to international leadership programs, all funded by the U.S. And we work with public sector. We work with we have an American corner here at your university. We work with a lot of different groups in order to make our funds go farther. And we work with amazingly innovative people based here in Portugal and in the United States and all around the world to make these things happen. Thank you for your time.